The day her husband Arthur celebrated his 70th birthday by becoming an internet sensation was the day Helen's world collapsed. Photos of the gray-haired professor tenderly embracing his widowed childhood sweetheart went viral. The entire country swooned over the story of a timeless love that had conquered decades of separation. But Helen, the woman he had spent nearly half a century with, was left out of the picture, erased from the narrative. And now, here she was, standing at the entrance to a gleaming banquet hall where the newlyweds were being celebrated. Arthur spotted her and began weaving through the crowd of guests. His stride was no longer as steady as it once was, but he clutched the hand of his new wife, the famous writer Clara, with a youthful grip. "Helen," he hissed as he drew closer, his voice trembling with poorly concealed panic. "I'm begging you, don't make a scene. Let's handle this civilly." A cold, almost predatory smile touched Helen's lips. "I didn't come to cause a scene, Arthur. I've brought you a gift, a truly magnificent one." Just a month ago, a scene like this would have seemed like a madman's fantasy. The demand for a divorce had come like a bolt from the blue. At 70 years old, Arthur hadn't bothered with intrigue. His directness was brutal. "Victor died," he'd announced, not looking up from his newspaper. "Clara needs my support now more than ever. I want to spend the rest of my days with her." The first thought that pierced Helen's mind was a whirlwind of self-blame. What did I do wrong? Maybe it's just an old man's whim, another passing fancy? But all her pleas, all her attempts to appeal to reason and conscience, shattered against his impenetrable resolve. He had made his decision. He was leaving her. Period. The changes were swift and merciless. 2 weeks ago, he was sitting in his favorite armchair, waiting for her to serve him lunch. Today, he was another woman's husband, the hero of a romantic news story. Helen calmly scanned the hall, packed to the brim with guests. Arthur's adoring students, his old colleagues, admirers of Clara's talent. In the crowd, she spotted her own daughter, Alice, clutching a huge bouquet, clearly intended for the newlyweds. Upon seeing her mother, Alice irritably shoved the flowers at a random guest and marched toward her. Her voice was a mix of disappointment and icy annoyance. "Mother, what the hell are you doing here? This is Dad's special day. If you've come to make a spectacle of yourself, you'll have only yourself to blame." "Because of me?" Helen repeated automatically, as if she couldn't believe her ears. "What kind of person do you think I am?" Alice gave her a withering look. "Dad is a luminary of science, a world-renowned professor. Thousands of people respect him. And you? You're just an uneducated housewife." Just then, Clara approached them and gently touched Alice's arm. "Don't speak to your mother that way," she said, her voice velvety and placating. "She raised you and took care of your father her entire life. Her fate hasn't been easy either." Alice's expression softened. "Of course, Clara, you're right." She turned back to her mother, with less aggression but the same impatience. "Mom, you don't belong here. This is Dad and Aunt Clara's wedding." Her daughter was clearly in a hurry to get rid of her. Without letting her get a word in, she all but forced Helen out of the hall. At the hotel's main entrance, Alice tossed over her shoulder, "Mom, someone needs to pick up Leo from daycare, and the house is empty. Go get him, take him to the playground for a while." The mention of her grandson, little Leo, made Helen pause. She took a deep breath, swallowing the rage that rose in her throat. Fine. For now, she would retreat. Turning on her heel, she walked silently toward the daycare center. At that moment, a group of cheerful young people rushed past her into the hotel. One of them accidentally bumped her. He immediately turned to help. "I'm so sorry. We're in a hurry for the wedding." His friend waved impatiently. "Come on, let's go. Professor Arthur and the writer Clara's wedding is about to start. We can't waste a minute." She watched them go, and a thought flashed through her mind. Right now, on a huge screen in that hall, there was undoubtedly a wedding photo of them with some cliché caption like, "Love knows no bounds." How tacky. A bitter smile touched Helen's lips. In the eyes of the world, including her own family, she had never been Arthur's equal. And yet, once upon a time, it was she, not he, who was supposed to get an education. Her father, a simple working man, had gathered every last penny of the family's savings to pay for Arthur's tuition. The orphaned son of his best friend, Helen had to drop out of school for it. She still remembered that night. Her mother, hand clamped over her mouth, weeping silently in the kitchen. "We should have let Helen study. Otherwise, she'll repeat my fate." Her father just smoked silently by the open window, shrouded in clouds of smoke. But Helen hadn't been angry then. She had been genuinely happy for Arthur. She ran up to him, her eyes shining, and said, "You're going to university, and when you come back, you'll teach me everything you've learned. Deal?" When Arthur left for the city to study, he kept looking back, as if plagued by guilt. She, on the other hand, was annoyed by his hesitation. Staying in the village, she worked even harder to help her parents. She dreamed that by autumn they could earn a little more, and she would buy Arthur a nice gift. That winter, when he came home for the holidays, Arthur took her hand and promised fervently, "Helen, don't worry. As soon as I graduate and find a good job, I'll send for you. We'll live together and everything will be wonderful." And now he, the man to whom she had given her youth and her dreams, looked down on her, ashamed of her lack of education. "We have nothing in common," he had thrown at her. How many times over the years had she heard, "Helen, for God's sake, read a book. I'm embarrassed to admit to my students that my wife knows nothing about anything." And every time she would think, When? When am I supposed to read when I'm running the house, raising the children, and now the grandchildren?" When she would refuse, he would angrily toss his newspaper aside and head for the door, saying, "I'm going over to Clara's for tea. Maybe I'll play a game of chess with Victor." Only now did she understand that it was never about chess with Victor. It was about the woman he had always considered his ideal. She snapped out of her memories, standing at the gate of the Daisy Daycare Center. The playground was empty. Through the group's window, she saw Leo's lonely figure. The teacher saw her and sighed with obvious relief. "I couldn't reach Leo's mother. I'm so glad you're here." Helen took her grandson's hand, thanking the teacher. At the bus stop, Leo looked up at her with serious eyes. "Grandma, where are we going?" "To the playground in Riverside Park." The boy pouted. "I don't want to. I want to go to Grandpa's wedding." Helen froze. Even 6-year-old Leo was in on it. She wondered how they had explained this to a child, that his 70-year-old grandfather could never forget his first love. So he decided to go back to her. Her head was spinning, and Leo was already tugging at her sleeve. "Grandma, please take me. I heard my new grandma is Aunt Clara. Lots of kids in my class have her books. I'll tell everyone my grandma is a famous writer. Maybe then they'll stop making fun of me." Helen knelt down, took the small backpack off his shoulders, and with a gentle smile, made a decision. "All right, we're going to Grandpa's wedding." All the way there, Leo chattered non-stop. "Grandma, are you not going to live with us anymore? I heard Mom and Grandpa talking about sending you back to the village." Her heart clenched, but she forced a smile. "Do you want Grandma to go to the village?" The child's face wrinkled in deep thought. "If you leave, I can't have your chocolate cake. But if everyone finds out my new grandma is Aunt Clara, they'll be so jealous." He continued to mumble, weighing the pros and cons. Helen smirked, feeling both annoyed and amazed. At least Leo was honest. Unlike his mother and grandfather, who hid their true motives behind masks of nobility, one was chasing true love, the other was desperate to raise her social status through her new stepmother. And she, of course, was to blame for it all. "This is all because of you. If you had just tried a little, succeeded at something, we wouldn't have come to this." Arthur's words, thrown at her before he left, still rang in her ears. Alice echoed him. "Mom, don't worry about it. Dad and Aunt Clara are a perfect match. And let's be honest, you're just a housewife. You lived in complete comfort with Dad for so many years. You should be grateful." Now even a child had made it clear. They wanted her gone. Immediately. "Father," she prayed silently, "if you only knew how ungrateful the boy you sacrificed your own daughter's future for would turn out to be, you would bitterly regret your decision." She remembered the day Arthur proposed. She had hesitated, unsure what to say. "You're a brilliant scholar. You have a great future ahead of you. Am I really a match for you? Don't marry me out of a sense of duty to my father." But Arthur had looked at her with disarming sincerity. "It's not about duty. I just feel like we were made for each other. We'll be happy together." Such a simple, honest declaration. And she believed him. Back then, she believed his every word, thinking love was about partnership and trust. She could never have imagined that decades later, she would be cast aside like a finished book because he was ashamed to be seen with her in public. And now he stood beside Clara, basking in the glow of fame and universal admiration. The very man who had sworn to build a future with her had ruthlessly rewritten their shared history, erasing her from its pages as if she had never existed. She remembered the night before her own wedding. Her father had sat outside her door until dawn. In the morning, when she opened the door, she saw a pile of cigarette butts at his feet. He looked at her with a heavy gaze and said in a steady voice, "Don't you worry, daughter. If Arthur ever dares to hurt you, I will stand up for you." But her father died 5 years later, unable to keep his promise. There was no one left to protect her, and Arthur, the closest person in her world, no longer held back. By the time she returned, the banquet was in full swing. Arthur and Clara, radiant, stood in the center of the hall. The moment Leo saw his grandfather, he ran toward him, shouting, "Grandpa, you look so handsome today." The child's voice echoed through the hall, sparking a wave of fond murmurs. Even a child understood this was a joyous occasion. But no one in that room knew that the elegant suit that made Arthur look so distinguished was one she had tailored with her own hands. No one knew that on the inside of the cuff, she had embroidered a tiny blue thread, their secret good luck charm. He once called her his guardian angel, and today he wore that suit to marry another woman. Clara turned to her with a soft, condescending smile. "Helen, please, have a seat." Arthur immediately added, as if continuing her thought, "Have you decided when you're going back to the village? What are your plans?" Before she could answer, a venomous whisper spread through the room. "Why is she here? Such an ordinary woman, with no talents or accomplishments. How did she ever manage to marry the professor?" "Exactly. Now that they're divorced, she should have just disappeared. Let's be honest, she was never his equal." The words cut like shards of glass. Long-buried humiliations resurfaced. How, in all their years of marriage, Arthur had never once allowed her to visit him at work, not to bring him lunch, not to drop off papers. If it was absolutely necessary, he insisted she leave everything with the security guard, as if she were not a wife, but a servant. Or the time she had timidly asked him to recommend some books for her to read. His reply was icy. "Can you even read? Don't waste your time. Better go to the kitchen, we're hungry." He never wanted her to grow, because if she broadened her horizons, he would have no reason left to humiliate her. And without that, how could he justify leaving her for his precious first love? "Mother, why are you just standing there? Everyone's staring at you." Alice's voice snapped her out of her stupor. Her daughter sighed in frustration. "Just leave. Here, take 1,000 for a taxi. Go home and don't embarrass us. I'll come over for dinner after the wedding." She held out the money like a handout. For years, Helen had lived without any funds of her own, her every expense strictly controlled. And now her daughter was throwing cash at her, just to make her disappear. The irony. Helen looked at the bills in her hand, but didn't take them. Alice grew flustered. "Not enough? Fine, here's 5,000. Is that enough?" Before she could finish, Helen slapped her across the face. The sharp, stunning sound echoed through the silent hall. Alice froze, shocked. Guests craned their necks. Helen looked her daughter straight in the eye. "Who do you think you're talking to?" Her voice was ice. "Are you trying to bribe your own mother so she won't interfere with your father's wedding celebration with his mistress? You are just as ungrateful as he is." Alice stood stunned, pressing a hand to her burning cheek. Arthur and Clara rushed over. "Helen, calm down," Arthur began. "This is my wedding." He paused, choosing his words. "Fine, I admit your father helped me a great deal, but I've repaid my debt over all these years. I never treated you poorly." "Yes, Helen," Clara chimed in with her syrupy voice. "I understand you're hurt, but I'm not trying to erase your past. I acknowledge your long history together." Arthur looked wearily at Helen. "So why can't you just let go?" She let out a short, dry laugh. "That's a half-truth. Yes, you didn't starve me. But while you were receiving your grants and awards, a large portion of that money went directly to Clara and her family." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "And after Alice was born," Helen continued, her voice growing stronger with every word, "you stopped sharing not just a bed with me, but a room. You said you needed a quiet place for your academic work. But even when Alice wasn't home, you never came near me." She stared him down. "Now I understand why." The murmur in the hall grew into a loud rumble. "You weren't preserving your academic focus. You were preserving yourself for Clara." A deafening silence fell over the room. Then the whispering exploded with new force. "Oh my God, is she serious? He treated her like that for decades. That's monstrous." Arthur's face turned crimson, his fists clenched. "This is humiliating. How dare you say this in front of everyone?" "Oh, you're concerned about dignity now?" Helen arched an eyebrow. "You had decades to show some, Arthur. Where was it when you were secretly meeting Clara behind her husband Victor's back?" The hall gasped at her words. Arthur raised a hand, pointing a finger that trembled with rage. "You senseless woman! Have you no shame airing this in public?" "Yes, I'm simple," she smiled slowly. "But at least I know the difference between right and wrong." Her gaze shot from him to Clara. "Unlike the two of you." Arthur was literally shaking with fury. And for the first time in years, Helen felt a bitter satisfaction. Decades ago, her father had brought a thin, frightened boy to their home. He said it was the son of his best friend who had saved his life. "I can't just abandon him to his fate." From that night on, Arthur became part of their family. Her mother, a simple and kind-hearted woman, never questioned her father's decisions. But the village was rife with gossip. "Are you sure he's not your husband's illegitimate son?" the neighbors would hiss. Every time she heard it, her mother would storm out onto the porch, ready for a fight. "Shut your filthy mouths. My husband is not like that. You'd be better off watching your own men." With the neighbors, she was merciless. But when she turned to Arthur, her face would soften. "Don't be afraid, dear. As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you." Helen, like her mother, defended Arthur fiercely. Anyone who gave him a sideways glance got an earful from her. Even the local bullies were afraid of her. She could never have imagined that the person she protected from the whole world would turn out to be a traitor. Helen. Arthur's voice pulled her from her memories. "I've already told you. I will spend the rest of my life with Clara. No matter how many scenes you make, it won't change anything. Try to keep a shred of your dignity." "I don't give a damn who you spend the rest of your life with," she shot back. "But we're barely divorced, and you're already celebrating a wedding. Tell me, which one of us lacks dignity?" She took a step toward him. "You want peace, but on your terms. I gave everything to this marriage, and you want to throw me out with nothing. Do you think I'm too stupid to see the injustice in that?" Clara let out a scornful laugh. "Helen," she smirked, "no one is suggesting you leave with nothing. It's just that maintaining the house was quite expensive, so there's not much left. But don't worry. When you move to the village, Arthur will send you an allowance. We'll even help with repairs on your old house." Her words sparked a new wave of gossip. "Ah, so she's just after money. I knew it. What a calculating bitch." Helen let out a cold, bitter laugh. "I thought I was in a room full of intellectuals." Her voice was laced with poisonous irony. "But it turns out you're all just as ignorant." Her gaze swept over the crowd. "No better than these two hypocrites." She turned to Arthur and Clara. "You want to play games? Fine, I'll see you in court." She didn't argue further. Turning, Helen headed for the exit, and then home. While they celebrated, she packed her things. The suitcase was barely half full. As she was dragging it to the door, the newlyweds returned. "Mom, you can stay for a while," Alice said with a casual tone, as if the recent scene had never happened. "We're leaving on a little trip anyway." There was a launch for Clara's new book in the next town. Helen laughed quietly. "Well, have a wonderful trip." Her calmness seemed to unnerve them more than her anger. "Helen," Arthur began cautiously, "I know you're a reasonable person. Don't do anything foolish." Even Alice, who had always treated her with contempt, looked concerned. "Mom, where are you going? I'll drive you." "There's no need. Stay here. Get closer to your new mother. After all, you'll need her influence to keep climbing the social ladder." Her words dripped with sharp sarcasm. Without waiting for a reply, she walked out of the house that was no longer hers. That evening, she saw a post from Alice online. A family portrait. Alice, beaming, pressed close to Clara. Clara had never been able to have children. Her late husband, Victor, had adored her, and, after an illness left her infertile, had cherished her even more. Thinking of his unwavering love, Helen felt only pity. It was obvious Clara and Arthur's affair had begun long before Victor's death. She contacted a lawyer. After hearing her story, he was furious. "We must expose him as the guilty party. Otherwise, he'll claim in court that he supported you all these years, which will put you at a disadvantage." Under his guidance, she recorded a short video telling her story. "I don't want him back. I just want what I am owed." To her surprise, the online reaction was overwhelming. "Ma'am, you did the right thing. Fight for your rights," people wrote. "She sacrificed her education for him, and he wants to throw her out in the village with nothing. What a scumbag." Her phone rang. It was Arthur. "Helen," his voice was tense. "You want money? Fine, I'll give it to you. Just stop harassing Clara. She's so upset, she's been crying all day." In the background, she heard Leo's voice. "Grandma is bad. She only wants money." Those words would have broken her heart before. Now she just smiled calmly and instructed her lawyer to draw up a new agreement. But then Alice published a rebuttal. "My mother has been a domineering housewife her whole life. My father was trapped in an unhappy marriage with her. Only in his twilight years did he find the courage to ask for a divorce, and right at that moment, Aunt Clara was widowed. What's wrong with two lovers being reunited?" And public opinion swung again. Now she was branded a controlling old woman. Alice even sent a mocking text. "I told you so. Go back to the village and live quietly." Emboldened by the support, Arthur stopped contacting her. But Helen had an ace up her sleeve. The late Victor's nephew, Paul Kelly. He had adored his uncle, who had been like a father to him. In Victor's final moments, Clara was nowhere to be seen. Only Paul was there. He recorded a video. "My name is Paul Kelly. I am the nephew of Victor Hayes, the late husband of Clara. For years I watched her cheat on my uncle, and I agonized over whether to tell him. Professor Arthur was one of her lovers. I have photos from 10 years ago that prove it." Paul's video was a bombshell. "Helen, how could you? Are you trying to destroy my reputation?" Arthur screamed into the phone. Helen's lawyer released an official statement about filing the lawsuit. Clara's books were pulled from stores, and the university terminated Arthur's contract. One evening, there was a knock on her door. Arthur and Clara stood on the threshold. Clara's knees buckled. "Helen, I'm begging you, let us go," she whispered, ready to fall to her knees. "If you leave Clara alone, I'll come back," Arthur muttered. "We can go back to how things were." Helen laughed in his face. "Do you really think I'm doing all this to get you back? The day you demanded a divorce, I stopped thinking of you as my husband. I'm simply taking what is rightfully mine." Just then, a message came from Alice. "Mom, Dad says they're at your place to apologize." Helen typed back, "Yes, your parents are here. Your mother is crying." Alice immediately wrote, "My mother? You mean you're not crying?" Helen smiled coldly and blocked her daughter's number. Soon, her lawyer informed her that Arthur had signed all the documents. With the money she received, Helen bought a plot of land and built a small shop, the country house. She grew vegetables and raised poultry. Her business thrived. One day, a young woman approached her. "Excuse me, are you that brave woman from the news?" She turned out to be a former student of Arthur's. "You proved that you can start a new life, even at 70. From her, Helen learned that Alice's career, which had relied so heavily on Clara's connections, had collapsed. The scandal had made her a pariah. One evening, Alice called. "Mom, I ruined everything. I've lost it all," she whispered. "I told you," Helen replied quietly. "You can't build your happiness on someone else's sorrow." Her own life had finally become what she had imagined in her youth. Quiet, peaceful, filled with simple work and the respect of people who valued her not for her husband's status, but for who she was. Standing on the porch of her little house, watching the sunset, Helen knew. She had paid a high price for her lessons, but she had never felt more free or at peace. This was the beginning of something new, something truly her own. and that was enough.